As we begin today, it is important to acknowledge that we are filming in Lloydminster on the border of Alberta and Saskatchewan in the heart of Treaty 6 territory. Before the arrival of the explorers and settlers, many First Nations traveled through and thrived in this area, which also includes the homeland of the Métis. I was born here, but I chose to return here as an adult. And now, after unlearning what I was taught in public school in the 1970s and 1980s, and relearning a less whitewashed history of this place, I see this land and its stories through very different eyes. I recognize that the roots of my family on the prairies came at the cost of the First Nations people who were here long before. Their land was taken so that my ancestors could farm and build their lives in this place that became known as Canada. I cannot change the past, but I can try to move forward in a good way by sharing what I've learned about the Indigenous peoples whose teachings are woven into this land and all it encompasses. In this episode entitled Environmental Literacy and Emotional Persecution, we pick up with the story of Willow and the first human. This leads to a discussion about the power of the shields and the meaning of the color red. We talk briefly about the notion of hibernation. Mr. Fine shares how plants and animals communicate and how we, as humans, could learn if only we would listen and pay attention. In an emotional scene, Wes makes the connection between the suffering of nature and his own personal persecution. Mr. Fine is sharing stories as he knows and has experienced them, which may differ from those told within other Indigenous communities and settler institutions. Throughout the series, we discuss various plants and traditional healing methods. This is not intended to replace medical advice from trained healthcare providers. Some episodes contain graphic descriptions of events witnessed and experienced by the guest at his time in residential school and at various points throughout his life. They may spark emotions, memories, and questions, so we are asked to listen with open hearts and minds. Viewer discretion is advised. Yeah, so we have told stories about Willow.
Yeah, in Cree we call it Neep Sea. But, we have walked with a protection in the shadow of the willow since the first human. And how the willow felt compassionate for the first human because we did not understand at the time how did we arrive in this time and place. What am I doing here? How am I going to survive? Because I look around and I see the power and beauty of the creation forces flowing through all of the living aspects of this creation, the trees, the plants, the animals, the wind, the fire, the water, the earth. All of these elementals are in the beginning were overflowing with energy to the point where the earth was full of the energy that all of these things gave off. And initially, in the first days, it was said that it was not necessary to hunt and kill other animals in order to survive. All we had to do was walk around in the abundance of a natural environment, and the air would be so full of the life-giving energies of the plants that they had acquired through the earth that they stood and grew in, that all a human being, all an animal had to do was walk and breathe in and breathe out. And that would provide them with the necessary ingredients which would enable them to survive, not only to survive, but to thrive, because they had the power of the spirit and the power of love and creative energy filling their systems. And in those days, water was different composition, air was different, earth was different, fire affected us and connected to us differently. But in our story of first human, how Willow stood nearby watching as human grappled with their intellect to try to understand, what am I doing here? And Willow watched when human, and the first human, became despondent and began to weep because perhaps the thought was, I am only here for a fleeting moment in time and then I will vanish. Because when I look around and I see these plants, I see they have a system of rebirth and propagating, and this is their pathway into the future. Animals also have the power, the ability, the female ones, to connect to that life force and to bring forth physical life into this time and place. But that was not understood at first, and so when human became was in despair about, what am I doing here? How am I going to survive? I cannot see a future. But then, and sat and began to weep. And the willow stood nearby and with compassion also began to weep. But it asked that human, Tane kumi tahkapin ka mamatoy? Why is it that you sit there and cry? And the first human answered, explaining that I cry because I have no idea why I am here, what I am to do here, how I am to survive here, if I am to survive. And then began to weep, and the willow also wept. And as the willow wept, tears began to flow down its body. And as they flowed out of its body, they began to get dry, and to cling on to the willow tree. And when they dried, they formed into what we describe today as a fungus, but in the old days it was described as the teardrops of the willow. Nipsi upah kawapuin, the teardrops that were shed in compassion for humanity. And Willow explained that you can take my physical body and use it to create shields, which also will become doorways that spirits can come and go in and out of as your relationship and your needs require. And the ones that we were taught to make were what the spirits now refer to as ka ki, because they are imbued with spirit. And those are the first ones that were given with the first ceremony. And with the evolution of time, people lost that connection to the willow and lost the ability and the understanding and the knowledge of, for instance, how many are tied there? What are the colors it is painted with? And that represents, and what spirit does that represent? And what direction does that spirit sit in? Yes. All of those is told by those sticks. All of that information, if you understand how to read, you see.
So there's a story here.
Absolutely.
This tells a story.
And the story of your evolution.
Yeah.
The story of your creation, your creative energy, and your understanding and the faith that has brought you this far in your personal life in this time and space. I mean, all of that is known. There is a spirit in that shield, and it knows all of those aspects. It also knows where you've come from, and it knows where you're going, so it can help guide you into the places that Creator meant you to reach, the heights that you would come to in terms of your level of understanding, of your emotionality, of your connectedness to the rest of creation, and your connectedness to Creator and the ones that work with Creator. All of that is known and told by those things. And you are a part of that. You are in that. A person who can see and who can feel. If you allowed them to touch that shield, they would know many things about you and the line that you came from. The memories in the blood, the memories in the bones, and the memories that are held by your soul. It is a powerful thing that, and very few people now know how or have the standing to work with that level of power. And I try to help people reach that place of worthiness when they come. I push them to their limits, urge them to become truly the powerful, visionary, loving, incredibly courageous entities that they were dreamed to become, so they could walk into a future that is full of light and health and healing and love, support, all of these things that will help move us into the next phase of our creation, into the next level. We say we do things in a circle, but as a circle, you travel around the circle, it begins to tighten up and get smaller. And when it does, it's focused. it cannot remain static. It will either ascend or it will descend, given the nature of the energies that you are bringing to it. But if it ascends and it begins to tighten, when all the collective energies in that circle form a single entity, then a whole new being is born out of the collective energies and love and vision and guidance of all of these ones that have gathered together. They all form part of it. They are all part of it, but what they have given birth to is far more powerful and intuitive and caring and loving than any single being who sits in that sacred circle. They have been processed and had the best of what they could aspire to become, ascend, and be that the birth of a total new level of creation with the positive energy. With the negative energy, it cannot elevate. And so the spiral descends until it touches the earth. And when it touches the earth reaches out and takes it into her core and processes it. And after a time, it will send it back to the surface. And from all of these negative energies that we have set free and the earth has taken, the effect that they will have on the earth is that it will manifest, that kind of energy will manifest itself as tsunamis, as volcanoes, as earthquakes, as tornadoes, as uncontrollable fires. All of these things that people in their blindness refer to as acts of God, when in reality, if you were able to trace the results of the kind of energy that created these situations, you would know that it had come from the hearts and the minds and the weakened souls of powerless people who live in a world of power they cannot understand or capture or contain or direct. And if we are open, we can begin to see what did we leave behind and what do we need to go back and reclaim, so that we can rebalance not only the environment outside of ourselves, but the environment within ourselves. So those are powerful things.
So in the olden days, this could have been an offering, just like how we offer cloth now. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And unlike cloth, these are imbued with spirit.
Right.
Cloth, I have to process, I have to smudge, because who made the cloth? With the machines. What kind of energy? Were they happy to be doing this? Were they celebrating it? Or was this just something they had to do in order to survive? And there is no love, there is no soul, there is no energy until you ask the spirits to bring that to life.
Right.
Yeah. In the same way, we ask them to bring those to life.
And then when we made these, you painted them.
Mm-hmm. And After I had painted them, I held them over the smudge, and I lifted them up to awaken the soul that resides within those sticks. We say, epasiguna mek, elevating them to have a standing soul in our ceremonies, so that they stand with us, beside us, in front of us, behind us, over us, under us, to all of the places that our energies travel through.
So then it's a doorway, but it's also a shield.
Yes.
So shielding us from negative energies.
Mm-hmm. And if you have one hanging in your bedroom, for instance, it will change the quality of the dreams that you experience. Because when your mind and your body are at rest, then your soul, propelled by your emotions, emotional energy, becomes active in a totally different dimension. It's similar to this, it's beside this, but it's different. And, I thought about that and meditated about it. And one time the bear spirit came to me and saw that I had been wondering about this and explained to me. He said, "Grandson, when I go into my den for the winter, I do not go there to rest. I go there to put my body in a safe and holy place. But I am not there resting. I am there evolving, changing, growing, traveling all over creation and keeping watch over you. For me, it is not a place of rest. It is simply a place I can leave my body and do what I have to do in the dimension of the spiritual."
Yeah, I think we think of hibernating as something passive,
Right.
right? But I love this explanation that it's active and it's restorative.
Yeah,
And as humans, we probably need that too.
absolutely. And that's what happens to us when we lay down.
Mm-hmm.
If we have developed those components of ourselves which connect us to the holy and the sacred, when your body relaxes and is at rest, then your soul ascends and can begin to interact and travel with and learn from and share with all of the other spirits that are there outside of us and are a part of creation. And we need that connection. We need that connection.
So the paint you used on here is red, and I offered you red cloth today. And you've always told me kind of trust your gut and pick the color that resonates with me.
That you feel.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about the color red a bit?
Well, the color red, it's something in my circle that inhabits the southern component of the ceremonial circle. And in that southern direction, there are spirits who reside there in that direction that with the creation of those can come and go depending on whether you have developed a personal relationship with those entities. And red, it symbolizes a vitality of growth and evolution, a powerful vitality, not just moving from one meaningless state of existence to another because your body is growing and processing everything, even if you can't understand it. It will continue. It doesn't require your permission to grow, you see. It will do it because it was programmed to be that way with your DNA. And depending on the switches, what parts of your DNA have been turned on and what have been turned off, it will impact and reflect the depth of the struggles that you will have to engage in order to switch back the ones that you require today in this time and place.
So I've got a few directions that have come up. So you talked about the trees, and that reminded me of the story you told about cutting the grass. And we always say that, oh, I love the smell of fresh cut grass. But you had a different interpretation of that
Yeah.
smell.
When plants, part of the communication of process of plants, well, also humans, is the ability to speak not with necessarily with sound, but there are other components of who we are. For instance, the ability to smell. And when I walk past a lawn that has been freshly cut, I smell that and I think this is grass in distress. This is grass sending out a collective aura because they have been attacked by the technology that we have developed with the idea that I will make an improvement on this grass. I'll cut it short so it's more pleasing to the eye and that it's all even. And this grass sends out these scents to the rest of the environment, and those scents may attract the insects and the worms and the birds and all of these things that the grass is asking, come and help me. I'm under attack. I need help. Can anyone understand me? And trees are like that too. And even a tree on one side of the bush attacked by things that threaten it will send messages to all of the other trees, even to the ones on the other side of the bush, and collectively they will send out scents to attract birds, to attract insects, to attract something that will guide it to the one that's in distress so it can be relieved and saved and protected. And it was through that scent when they called out to these ones who are knowledgeable about that level of communication to come and help. When we think about that, another thing, trees, my mitos, the black poplar, When you're walking around or driving where it is plentiful, sometimes you will see it has turned its leaves upside down. And it is informing you that within 3 hours, you will experience rain. You see. That's what it's saying to you. And if you look at the animals will be agitated, running about, you know, reinforcing the message of the tree. You see, we're all communicating with each other. And if I, as a human being, understand that, then I begin to develop a level of environmental literacy that will help me to be able to understand what's in the short-term future, and even to some degree what is in the long-term future. It's about being open and not thinking that only people have intelligence. We have developed these incredible technologies to go out into the rest of creation because we cannot recognize intelligent life here, and we think it must exist somewhere else, you see. And wherever you go, it will recognize you far before you recognize it. And intelligence has powers. I mean, they can disguise themselves. If you are not equipped to deal with the power and the energy of understanding, if you come with shields and saying, and every now and again peek over and say, nothing intelligent here, and but that age has come to an end. This is now a time and a space where we are being told to look. Your eyes are shields. Your eyes are shields. And they contain the light of your soul within your body. They can act as shields, or they can act as doorways for your soul to come out and flow. You see. Most of us have learned and developed the technologies that help us slam those doorways of light shut, because we fear the light outside, creator's light and energy, from entering our worthless, unworthy, shameful selves. And we say that your eyes are the doorway to your soul. And now it is the time to begin to open those doorways and begin to try to catch a glimpse of the light within that you are so desperately hiding from. Open those doorways and let the light within emanate out of you and connect to the light of the rest of creation that's carried by the spirits and by Creator and by all living things. I am trying to share what was important and what is critically important today.
You got emotional when you were talking about the grass.
Absolutely. Because I've been there. I have also suffered and experienced and remember the onslaughts where there were attempts to cut me to pieces, to destroy my energy, my emotional energy that nurtures my soul. When my understanding, history, visions, dreams were under attack, all by people who were educated and had high standings in their community. And I've come to realize that now there are racists within all those institutions. And they got together. And that was the reason I had to flee everywhere I went. Because the intellectuals, the people who had many letters behind their names, had connections to the authorities who wielded the power of life and death over traditional tribal peoples for any violation, whether it was imagined or real. And, well, I had to shoot him because I felt threatened by him. And the authorities never understand, well, why did you feel threatened? That is a sign of a disconnected human being if they feel threatened by someone simply because they're different. I've had to run and hide and could never rest and could only, exist on what I was allowed as work, for instance. And as long as I kept my understanding, my ceremony, my spirituality, my emotionality, my intellect under wraps, I might be allowed to stay a while, but when it no longer became possible to contain those energies within, and they came pouring out, and I was persecuted for that. That's the only word I can think of. And it was professionals walking hand in hand with the redcoats, for instance, who they asked to assault me, and which the redcoats did, and threatened me with that they had learned from their fellow professionals who I really was, and that they would be, and that they were going to get me. And so their understanding of who I was less than human. I have paid my dues, and this was not something I ever wanted, for my children or my descendants. But it was not something I could ignore, because that was my only road to salvation. And I tried to help my children understand that, because, when people were mocking me and making fun of me, I did not want my children to be ashamed of who their father was. A father who had no place in the mainstream society except as a dependent. Yes. So I had to move beyond that. I had to show them that I am a man with fears, but I have conquered to develop the strength and the faith that I have developed in Creator and in the spirit entities. I have traveled to other dimensions. I have seen the spiritual palaces in those times and in those places that will always exist and have always existed. I have been allowed to go and see them. And when I came back, that I would retain the memories of those places I had been to, simply as a spirit. To understand that I was a spiritual being placed on this earth with work to do, to begin to rebuild the fractured components of everything that we are, so we could reach out and join hands and help each other to stand.
And we've talked about, at times when you've been under attack and you've been physically not well, but this idea that there's still work to do. You're not done yet.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That, I had to rely on spiritual support gained through ceremonial practice when there were times that physically I was not able to be out in the world dancing about, but still I had this energy, these stories, this understanding, these connections to the spirit world that demanded that, well, if you cannot consciously or physically do these things, you still have a mind, you still have a voice, you still have memories, you still have dreams. And use what you have, and it will help you to move beyond those barriers that have been placed in your way, intended to deny your ability to share and to grow.
Thank you for joining us. We look forward to continuing these conversations. Special thanks to Mr. Fine Day for sharing his wisdom and teachings. Much appreciation to the Lloydminster Public School Division Prairie Thunder Boys Drum Group for helping us to start and end each episode in a good way. We also want to acknowledge our friends and family and all those who have helped us along the way, including Startup Lloydminster for letting us use their space, Lakeland College for the equipment, and TELUS STORYHIVE for their support.